Hello and welcome to The Artful Chef. Today we are studying color theory and how to use colored pencils with our color theory. So we're kind of combining two things at the same time, but I want you to practice your color theory using colored pencils, and then we will move into paint and oil pastels and things like that. So hopefully all of you have colored pencils at home. For the sake of your lesson today, I am using the Crazy Art brand because I know that it is easily accessible in most stores around you. If I had to choose a perfect colored pencil to use, I would definitely choose the Prismacolor Wood Stix because they are colored pencils without the wood, so you don't have to sharpen them. They lay down very nicely on paper, they blend beautifully, and they have amazing colors. So I definitely will link this Prismacolor Wood Stix in the description for this video so that you can see where to find them. They do have smaller packages other than the 48, but like I said, for the sake of today's lesson, I'm going to use the Crazy Art because I know that you can get your hands on it easily, and that way we can get the same results with our paper and the expectations will be the same. And let's get started. So before we begin actually using the colored pencils, I do want to review with you what was on the PowerPoint that you should have looked at before you got to the video, and it is about color theory. So we have been talking about values in color, and we were doing that just using a regular pencil, but I'm going to show you how to create values using colored pencils. One thing I want you to think about is there are 3 elements of color. And like I said, you should have looked at this on your PowerPoint, and if you did look at this, you would notice that there are a lot of things highlighted in yellow. Remember I said anything in yellow you want to make note of so that you can use those notes on your test in the future. Hue is one of the elements of color. Hue just is another word for color. Value, we've already talked about, that's the lightness and darkness of color. And a new word that you haven't heard yet is saturation. So that's how bright or how dull a color is. And it is possible to achieve bright colors and dull colors just by adding other colors in. Your primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. And I will demonstrate how to blend your colors to create your secondary colors, which are orange, green, and purple. So you achieve the orange, the green, and the purple by mixing primary colors. So I want to get you started by learning how to mix those colors. So when using colored pencils, there are some important things you need to think about before we actually put color down on this paper. So there are 3 P's I want you to remember. 3 P's when it comes to using colored pencils. The first one is pressure. The second one is patience. And the third one is patterns. So it is possible to create a beautiful colored pencil drawing that looks like you've painted it by remembering these things. So there are specific things that you can do as far as when you use your colored pencil. And we talked recently about mark making patterns. So some of these words will sound familiar when you hear about mark making. These are things you want to think about when you are using a colored pencil. So I'm going to show you the first one, which is scumbling. And we talked about scumbling with mark making, and scumbling, if you will remember, is just scribbled lines. But you want to layer with colored pencils. So one of the things that you need to think about is whatever pattern you start with. So if you start with scumbling, you need to finish with scumbling so that you don't see those distinct lines in the colored pencil that you would get if you change directions with your line. So right now I'm using scumbling, and I'm going a little bit over and over by creating layers. This is red. I'm actually going to put a little yellow beside it. So while we're doing the scumbling, we can learn about this color mixing. So if you notice where the red and the yellow come together, they create a secondary color, orange. You want to keep layering. You don't ever want to push down as hard as you possibly can on the first round with colored pencil, because you will not get the effect that you're going for. Colored pencil does have a lot of wax in it. And if you were to lay down your pencil on the first layer as heavy as you could go, you would not be able to blend and achieve these two noticeably different areas of color here. So I have my red and my yellow, but where the yellow covers the red and where the red comes back over the yellow, it creates an orange. And that's why I said one of your P's is patience, because I know some of you like to just get in a hurry and do this as fast as you can, as hard as you can, because you want to achieve that color right away. But you're going to get a much beautiful picture and a much more beautiful blend if you are patient with it and you layer it a little bit at a time like I have done. So I have just created a secondary color. So red plus yellow makes orange. Now let's talk about a second technique that you can use when you are using colored pencils. One option would be directional lines. That would mean that whatever direction you start coloring in with your colored pencils, you continue that line. So I'm just going to do a hatching, just my lines back and forth. And I'm going to lay down a layer of blue, and I'm going to extend it over here with the same amount of pressure that I'm using. I don't want to change the pressure because I'm just laying down one layer. And then on top of part of that blue, I'm going to go over that with red, and then I'm going to extend the red out to the side. So I'm making another secondary color. I'm using the primary color of red and the primary color of blue. Remember to do all your lines in the same direction. So I'm going side to side. So I'm going to continue that side to side pattern. Not changing directions. And you notice that I'm going over where my colors overlap, as well as where the color is individually with that layer. That way you can clearly see as they blend. And I am using art paper. I'm using an 80-pound paper, but you can just use copy paper at home if that's what you have available to you. If you don't have that and you have to do it on lined paper, that is fine. You can still see the work no matter what kind of paper you use. They do actually make a paper that is specifically for colored pencils. It's very smooth. But the papers that have a little more texture to them, have a little more grit, they work just as well. Alright, so I have combined blue plus red to create purple. Next, we are going to combine blue and yellow. So I'm going to lay down my layer of blue, extend it over here so I can overlap. Then I'm going to lay down my yellow. And you can already see that green color starting to come out. So where I have combined the primary color of blue and yellow, I have green. So we have created all of our secondary colors. We have created the orange, the purple, and the green. Now let's talk about warm colors and cool colors. As you saw on your PowerPoint, warm colors are red, orange, and yellow. So you have already created a warm color scheme. So I want you to label that. That's your warm color scheme. We have a cool color scheme, which is blue, purple, and green. Now, you can create your blue, purple, and green by mixing your primary colors. I'm going to make it a little bit easier, and I'm just going to use a blue, purple, and green, and I'm going to blend them together. Remember that you want to always stay the same direction when you are using colored pencils. So I am using my hatching and just going back and forth. One really cool thing that you can do by using colored pencils is burnishing, which is when you layer your colored pencil over and over and over again to the point that it gets that wax-like surface and is shiny. That's how people create those beautiful drawings of like fruits and vegetables that are done with colored pencil, but it looks like it's been done with paint. Kind of looks like it's wet and shiny. That is all created by your layering of your colored pencils. So again, goes back to the being patient, because those layers are really worth it. One really cool thing that I want to show you that you can do with colored pencil is you can blend with other things. So this is actually just some baby oil in the cap that came off of the bottle, and this is a Q-tip, and I'm going to take this baby oil and I'm just going to blend where these colored pencils come together, and I'm going to give it a little shine. So if you're going to move on to the next section, you might want to rotate your Q-tips so you don't blend your other colors where you don't want them to be. But using something like baby oil or olive oil or coconut oil, even rubbing alcohol, makes a really nice blendable medium that you can add to your colored pencil to give it a different effect. The next thing we're going to talk about are neutral colors. So neutral colors are black, gray, and white. We are going to use just black and white today so that I can show you how to create the gray in case your colored pencil box doesn't come with a gray. We're going to begin by putting down a layer of black. We're going to extend it into the area where I want my gray. Then I'm going to come in with white. And I'm going to keep layering that until I get the intensity of the color that I am looking for. So black, gray, and white, these are my neutral colors. The next thing we are going to talk about is a monochromatic color scheme. And a monochromatic color scheme works with your tints and shades and your tones. And if you remember from last week, tints and shades are colors that are created by either adding black or white. And a new one this week is tone. Tone is created by adding your gray. So we're going to do two different kinds of monochromatic color schemes so that you can see both. The first one is going to require my black, my gray, and my white. You can do it just by using black and white, but for the purpose of quickness in this video, I'm using the gray. I'm going to do a purple color scheme by using these 4 colors together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a large batch, a light layer of my starting color. I want to work in value because we have been talking about value, and I'm going to go from my lightest to my darkest shade of this purple. So my lightest shade would be my shade that is a tint. It would be the shade that includes my white. So I'm going to go over this end here with a layer of white. The next color in this section would be my purple that I'm using as my main color. So I'm going to layer that. My tone would add with gray, so I'm going to add a layer of gray here. And a layer of black for my shade. So one thing to think about when you are layering colored pencils is that it's always easier to go back and add a darker color than it is to take away a darker color. So be sparing when you add your blacks and your grays because it is a lot harder to get that back to where you're looking to go. So I'm going to go back over all of these areas with my purple because I'm layering. And I will continue to layer till I get the desired look of this monochromatic color scheme that I'm going for. So I've completed the layering. I want just a little bit more vibrancy than what I have here, so I'm going to go back in with that baby oil to see if I can brighten that up a little bit. There we go. So the next monochromatic type of color scheme that I'm going to go with is one that is all pinks, shades of pinks. Pinks and reds are in the same color family, so I might go with one that kind of looks like a plum, one that is a lighter pink, a bright pink. Let's see, it's kind of a shade of pink. And we'll go with red since those are all in the same color family. So to create a monochromatic color scheme using these, I would try to go with the darkest color first and work my way down to the lightest. And I would do the same thing that I did here where I create layers where they overlap. So that's my first layer, and I'm going to come back and repeat that process until I get that burnished look that I'm going for. So you have 2 different types of monochromatic. It's still all the same color in different tints and shades and tones here, and then these are all just different colors in the same color family. So 2 different ways that you can think of monochromatic. The next thing that I want to talk to you about are complementary colors and analogous colors. So complementary colors, and this is a completed color wheel. Complementary colors are colors that land across from one another on the color wheel. So I'm going to give you an example by using my ruler here. If you notice, the red and the green are across from each other. They are complementary. The orange and the blue are across from each other, so they are complementary. The yellow and the purple are complementary colors. Even in between colors, so your secondary colors, the colors that are in between them, you will learn about next year, but those colors are also complementary. So we have yellow, green, and red, violet. So these colors are actually created by using the primary color plus the secondary color to give you that shade that's in between. So we are going to do an example of a complementary color scheme. And we are also going to do a blending example of an analogous color scheme. So an analogous color scheme are colors that land, are three colors that land next to each other on the color wheel. So for example, if you did these three colors, yellow, yellow, green, and green, those would be analogous. You could use red, red, orange, and orange. You could use blue, green, blue, and blue, violet. So for my example today, I'm going to use the blue, green, the blue, and the blue, violet. So we're going to do both those color schemes, and let's get started on those. So complementary, we are going to go with the red and the green as our complementary color scheme. So I'm going to start with just a small section of green and a small section of red. They can overlap a little bit where they touch. Remember, use your patience. Layer slowly to be able to get the desired look that you are going for. You don't have to go all at it with everything you have on your first round. So this is your complementary color scheme. Now we're going to go with analogous. So remember I said we're going to use the blue-green, the blue, and the blue-violet. So I'm going to put them in the order that they would fall on the color wheel. And there you go. Now that you've learned all about your color theory, your basic colors, your secondary colors, your different color schemes, for your project this week, there is a template on your PowerPoint that looks similar to this. You are going to draw a keyhole. So this is, if you were looking through the keyhole in your door, this side, everything on the outside, guys, your background is just as important as whatever your focal point is on artwork. So it creates balance and unity, and it makes the piece come together as a whole. If you just leave all of this white, that's not really going to tell the full story. So whatever your door looks like, of that you're looking through the keyhole in, that's what I want you to imagine. So it can be an imaginary door. It can have lots of beautiful ornate patterns on it, or it could be an unusual color. It doesn't have to be basic, because this is art, and in art you don't have to be basic. This is your opportunity to really think outside the box. So This outside part is going to be your door. This is looking through the hole. What I want you to think about is what would be on the other side of that hole. If you could imagine it to be anything, what would you like to see through that hole? It can be realistic. It can be make-believe. If you want to look at fairies and a magical land with unicorns, by all means, you can draw that through here. If you want to look at the beach and the ocean and you just want to do an ocean scene, that's okay too. I want you to think about your different color schemes when you're doing this. Choose a color scheme. Then when you turn in your assignment, let me know which color scheme that you think that you used. If you are an Art 1 student, you will be choosing from your monochromatic, primary, warm, cool, secondary. You can use analogous colors or complementary colors on anything in here. If you are an Art 2 student, you can take the exterior of your door to another level and you can make it more 2D, 3D if you want. I would love to see that. But I also am looking for you to think a little higher in the color theory process and choose a color scheme that falls into some of the new things that you've learned about this week. So we also reviewed the different things that you did last year, but we also added tertiary colors. We added a triadic color scheme, a split complementary color scheme. So any of those things would be options for you. And if you want to try your hand at any of those skin tone color blendings and you want to draw some people in there, by all means, I would love to see that. So I can't wait to see what you come up with. But remember, template, door, outside is just as important as what's on the inside. And so think about that when you are completing your artwork, and I will see you in class.